Well, that was fantastic. Next slide. Andrew, Parag, what the fuck? I'm keeping the theme. You stole my jokes. Okay, so Alexander set us up for the best jokes ever on the oldest profession. Then we have the second oldest profession. You guys both tuck it all, and I have no idea what the third oldest profession is. Maybe it's academia, I'm not sure. So I really have nothing more to say, so let's just walk off the stage at this point. And Parag, you're putting dot zeros on everything as well, and I'm doing that. And I think you and I, in just a couple of years, we're gonna look back on this and laugh like it's the mullet of the 21st century. It's kind of tacky. So yeah, but it's tacky, and we're holding up to that. So just you wait. So the university's key product is supposed to be centered around knowledge and the skills to apply it, or innovation capital development. But my take is that we seem to have really lost touch with it. Somehow we've industrialized higher education, and now we're really focused on producing packaged brains. The university as an enterprise stamps us out as credentialed, finished products. I mean, brains are neatly packaged, and supposedly we package very fresh with knowledge that's relevant to workforce needs. But as we know today, and I think that's why we're here today, that's all changing. And yes, I'm also a product of this system. I'm credentialed, and I'd be lying to you if I said that our industrial system doesn't have any value, but it does have a lot of value. I just think we could do a whole lot better. So Don Tapscott says to always start off with a picture of your most recent book, and so we've got Invisible Learning, and that's a cover that we wanted to use. We took the packaged brain idea, and we want to make the point that, well, number one, it was not supposed to be your typical book, but we also want to play the industrial model of learning that's really creating many of the problems that we face today. So a colleague of mine at the University of Oxford, Crispo Cobo and I, we wrote it, and it's in Spanish, so it's called Aprendizaje Invisible, but it's just re-released last week as a free download, so you can go to invisiblelearning.com and grab it there and run through Google Translate or read in the original Spanish. Anyhow, it was published by the University of Barcelona, and they complained about the brain. They thought it was disgusting, but it's exactly what they do. So this is what the actual book cover looks like, and it's kind of boring, and there you go. So in the Invisible Learning Project, we looked at various institutions, trends, and some inspiring practices occurring in the learning world. And Invisible Learning covers a spectrum, but also these fuzzy metaspaces in between, formal, non-formal, informal learning, and the interfaces between all these above things as well. Formal learning is what we're used to in schools. You have a syllabus, you have a curriculum, you have tests. Non-formal learning is learning that occurs in a formal learning environment, but we just don't recognize it. Workshops and seminars, this event really falls into that category. Informal learning is semi-structured and occurs in a variety of places and through a variety of interactions. And this is what I'm very much interested in this, because this is how we learn cultures. This is how we learn languages. All these other things almost like natural processes. And we start to look at invisible learning as things that go across the spectrum. Some of the examples that really cut through many of these areas are study abroad, right? Augmented reality is learning, not just formally, but also informally, non-formally, and even serendipitously. Things that just you stumble upon. I think some bad examples when we talk about the future of education, really tapping these areas, is online learning. Because it's only able to touch between, maybe at the most, between formal and non-formal learning, but it's really a formal learning experience. Now, one of the interesting things about invisible learning is that we don't know, we can't measure how much of what we learn is actually invisible versus visible. We can kind of make some guesstimations, some gut feelings. John Seeley Brown guesstimates that the ratio is about 5 to 1. That is, for every 6 things that we learn, only 1 is in formal education. And so that chart's got some invisible learning facts around that. And the other scary fact is that the average weight of the adult American is 80.5 kilograms, and we're getting heavier. So to compound it all, things are changing. Society's evolving, we're growing up, and look at the trends and other pieces from our past, present, or futures. We can create a better picture of what's happening in society and education as a whole, and project some futures from it. And I'm not going to pretend to have any answers for it, but I hope that we could, provoke enough discussion here that for the rest of the day that we could really start to tackle these issues. And like Parag, I use a really ugly named framework to describe it all, but I call it Society 1.0 through Society 3.0. And yeah, it really illustrates moving from industrial-based economy to what I call nomad society. And I think we have a group of nomads here to help us explain that a bit too. So Society 1.0 really emerged in the agricultural-based society, and this is where we had family-based enterprises, kids learned at home, kids worked at home, kids were engaged cross-generationally. And then adults could learn from kids, as well as kids learning from adults. And kids were able to contribute at all economic levels. But then we also industrialized, developed an industrial economy, job wage-based enterprises. Kids learned increasingly at schools. We had to put them in schools. If you worked at a factory, you lose an arm, an eye, you get killed or something, it was just getting dangerous. So we put them in schools, which we modeled after factories, incidentally. So everybody's lined up in rows, facing the front, so you have a person standing right here with the absolute knowledge and authority as designated by the state to make sure you come out as a finished product and quality control and put the plastic wrap over your brain. And this also carried over into the information age, where we interpreted data, and in a very industrial way. We try to organize our lives very hierarchically. We had siloed jobs and roles. So it was easy to train for one career and know that that career is going to be there because everything is very siloed and very easily definable. And we did this to avoid chaos and ambiguity at all costs. But as we developed a bit, I think Society 2.0 really describes much of what we're experiencing today. And this is really the impacts of the knowledge age. This is where we're taking information and we're asking, well, so what? What do you know? And so we're developing, this is more of a knowledge-based society. I'll talk about that a little bit more too, where we create meanings on a personal basis. And also as social animals, we construct meanings as social and social configurations. And chaos and ambiguity is being seen as something not to be avoided, but as something that people are really trying very hard to manage. And we start looking a little bit in the future. I call it Society 3.0, but I also call it Nomad Society. This is really the innovation and design age. We're talking about contextually applied knowledge, taking the knowledge that we have and applying it towards useful applications. It's called innovation. And we're finding out that because people in the modern economy or the emerging economy need to be highly specialized as individuals. We're seeing hyper-individualization take place. And that the diffusion of knowledge is becoming horizontalized. The hierarchies that we have just don't make any sense anymore. Organizations are having a hard time de-hierarchying their hierarchies. So we see heterarchical relationships. So before we used to have very nice, clean organizational charts. It was very easy to tell who reported who. Now we're kind of looking at it looks like spaghetti and meatballs. It's becoming chaotic. And so chaos and ambiguity are being embraced and attended to. And this is all being driven by rampant globalization and interconnectedness. We also have accelerating technological change, which impacts social change as well. And I would say also innovation society fueled by nomads. Now, nomads are highly mobile knowledge workers with specific individual level knowledge and skills. They're unique and they leverage their technologies to navigate and seize on opportunities globally. Now, the interesting thing is that now that corporations are no longer loyal to employees, particularly younger employees are no longer loyal to the employers. And the growing class of knowledge or innovation design workers are becoming very nomadic. That is, we're moving from gig to gig rather than being stuck in one career or staying within one career. You can't expect to work with a single company or a single institution, a single university, your entire careers. Rather, we float among them. We wear many different hats throughout our lives. And I think that we see nomads emerge as a professional model or as in practice. I think that for many 1.0 model institutions, they look like space aliens. So I've got space invaders on the slide. And also for 1.0 model universities, it's very alien to them because we prepare people for very siloed job roles and careers. So in the emerging economy, everybody's at risk of career derailment or reinvention, especially nomads. So they must continuously design their jobs and also the nature of the work. But most universities are not focused on the creation of hyper-individualized workers. So we're all white belts at creating our futures in work and learning. I mean, the future is not provided for us. The future is created. And I think that today's youth must take a leadership position in co-designing this, because we've never been there before, we don't have any role models, and we're all responsible for co-creating it together, nomadic or otherwise. And this ugly, ugly chart, and if you're to attend our workshop this afternoon, we'll give you a copy of this, really illustrates some of these changes that are taking place. In short, we're moving from fundamental relationships that used to be very simple and easily defined to something that's very complex, creative. And we say teleological, which means that the system is complex in itself and that it generates its own goals. Conceptualization is more intentional self-organizing than being hierarchic. We're looking for synergies rather than mechanical relationships. The world is no longer determined for us. I mean, it used to be that if your grandfather was a baker, your father was a baker, and you were expected to become a baker. And chances are that your last name is also Baker. That's not true anymore. Now you got to change that. You have to design your own future, design your own careers, design your own name. Causality is no longer linear. It used to be very easy to see. You open the newspaper, go, oh, it's very obvious. A causes B, causes C, causes D. That's not true anymore. Change is happening so fast. We're being bombarded by so much news, by so much awesomeness out there that it's hard to tell what's going on. It looks anti-causal. So D causes A, which causes B, which causes A again, which causes N. It's hard to make sense of that. In change processes, we're seeing more and more creative destruction occur. And maybe that's what we'll do here today. Of course, place is globalized and reality is much more contextual than it ever was objective. So when we contextualize this a little bit, we're moving from a university where the meaning needs to be dictated for us. Then the professor would go on and dictate what you needed to know, and because everything was very well defined, the career you were going to have was very well defined, to something where we have to put our kind of thumbs in our pockets and say, well, we don't know either. We have to co-create meanings together. This requires thought leadership from students that we haven't quite seen before. In a 1.0 university, sadly, as much as we spend money on technology, it's often ignored or just lacks purpose. But in a 3.0 university, I think we just accept it for what it is and embed it quite ambiently, as we do in the business world. In 1.0 university, teaching is done from professor to student. And at 3.0, teaching can be done from people to people, co-constructivism, and also with technology. And schools can be located everywhere rather than just in specific locations or just even online. I think some great examples of those would be the Shibuya University Network in Tokyo, which is created by a 27-year-old guy who was so fed up with Japanese higher education, he created his own university. Right? So you go to a bowling alley, you could have a learning experience and create mechanisms to have that recognized. You go to a cafe, coffee shop, whatever, those opportunities are there. Create a new system, embedding it in the community. In the 1.0 university, students are passive consumers. But in the 3.0 university, they're also co-creators and hyper-individualized. When I talk about hyper-individualization, I'm really talking about post-disciplinary experts. That means that they're experts at the individual level. That you're the person that knows your field. In 1.0 university, professors are information agents, but in the 3.0 university, a professor could be anybody, anywhere. So what's my point? I think that we just seem to be ignorant of these transitions in Western education. How often do we get engaged in conversations on utilizing our imagination, our creativity, or innovation? Or how can we put forward policies to make our schools into more creative institutions and not factories of test takers? And this is my take. And that the core problem is that I think that universities, get it, but the core problem is that they're having really an epistemic and ontological problem. Epistemology is about the nature of knowledge, but I think we've really lost touch with what knowledge is versus information, for example, and what it means for individuals. Ontology is the nature of being. If the university thinks that's a knowledge transfer institution but delivers information instead, we have a severe crisis there. So let's get some quick definitions. So data are bits and pieces here and there. And in the digital world, it's kind of ones and zeros. In the real world, it's the various inputs and signals that we receive. Once we organize this, we create information, like the sky is blue. Unless if you live in the Netherlands, in which case it's blue with a ton of airplane contrails. It's a joke. It's okay to laugh. The knowledge exists in both tacit and explicit forms. And so personal knowledge is comprised of the combination of tacit and explicit elements. So explicit knowledge is communicated easily, like from reading a book. And universities are really good at this. You get it from research. You get explicit knowledge that says, eating citrus will not give you scurvy. Tacit knowledge is more like learning by doing. And universities have really lost touch with this. An example of learning by doing is by writing. It's like riding a bicycle. I could write a book that's this thick on how to ride a bicycle, but it's still not going to teach you how to do it. You have to go out and do it. You combine these things together, you got personal knowledge. And then we're social animals, so we get into different social configurations. We can tap into different social knowledges. We're pretty cool. Then innovation is the expression of your knowledge to produce a new benefit, to create something meaningful. So innovation is where you take flight yourself, and I suppose you can paint the sky with your own ideas. Now, I think it's also important to say something about technology, because oftentimes when I talk about innovation or entrepreneurship in education, it seems that the conversation immediately jumps to technology, especially ICT as sort of the silver bullet answer to all of our problems. But in actuality, as learning tools, we've been using new technologies to do the same old shit all too often, rather than looking at the purpose of ways that we could be using technologies to do some really cool new stuff that we haven't even dreamed of. And we have to start thinking of those things. The question is, how can you transform the role of computers as industrial machines in industrial environments to those that support human machines in nomadic schools? Another thing that's interesting about technology is that it's changing rapidly. Computers are changing rapidly. Given the doubling pace of Moore's law, a $1,000 computer today would have the computational capacity of the entire universe within 600 years. We scale it back down to modern times, though, but this has some really real effects in terms of processing speed, the amount of data that we're creating, the speed at which we've decoded the human genome. It's all been following an exponential curve. Now, while technology has been evolving rapidly, thanks to our help, the human brain, that's us on there, the meat, we haven't changed a bit in the last 130,000 years. So we need to understand ourselves better and our own limits in a world that's rapidly changing around us. We cannot apply the same requirements for advancements in human systems that we do with technological systems unless we evolve ourselves a bit more as humans. This is quite the challenge. There's a guy at Carnegie Mellon University with a great name, Hans Moravec. And he's got a paradox, because I thought I'd have my own paradox, and he's got a paradox too. His is really cool because he's a roboticist. And what he is saying, that his years of artificial intelligence research, is that it's very easy to program computers to do tasks that are very difficult for humans to do, like accounting. But it's not easy to train computers or robots to do things that are very basic to humans, like gardening or picking up the phone. So maybe there'll be roles for us in the future as gardeners. Now, my paradox is that we're striving to design machines that can behave as humans, but we're also teaching humans to behave as machines. The implication of this is that we're preparing humans to be replaced by those machines, or for jobs that could be done by machines. So our entire formal education system treats us as industrial products. It's designed to create factory workers and bureaucrats and farmers. It's not designed to make the most of our capabilities to be imaginative, creative, and to act of them, which would be innovative. So my challenge for us is, how can we use ICTs to make us smarter? How can we use ICTs better to make universities smarter? And so I think we really need to get back in touch with what it means to be human. Technologies need to enable us on how to learn rather than what to learn, and activate our mindware rather than software or hardware. So getting back to my point, I think that university is really confusing information delivery for knowledge transfer or new knowledge creation. But this is a big deal because, like, given the rate of accelerating technological change and social change, which feedback loops into each other, students need critical knowledge to succeed in a world that's increasingly chaotic and ambiguous. We have to learn how to navigate this. Even more so, we're talking about accelerating change. The nature of knowledge is changing. The half-life usability of knowledge is changing. That if you're coming out with so-called hard knowledge, hard skills, you may be obsolete by the time you leave university. And for people in engineering and the hard sciences, this is a very real problem. Today you may be good for a couple of years before you have to go back to school and refresh, or find other ways to refresh. And this is a challenge for universities and also human resource development managers. And universities' central administrations keep growing. We're increasingly treating them as corporations that need to be managed with many layers of managers. And my university, at the University of Minnesota, is a great example of that. And I think that, getting back to previous talks here, rather than talk about the enterprising university, we're looking at the university as a large enterprise, and that's dangerous. Even worse, we're trying to manage knowledge and our knowledge products, which does not work very well. So my take is that knowledge-oriented universities need to embrace the sort of chaos and an ambiguity that the students and the faculty bring in, and enable people to create their own outcomes. I think that some institutions understand the distinction between information and knowledge. I think MIT, the Open Courseware Consortium, really gets it, right? They're posting information, course syllabi, etc. online. They know that sharing their content makes the market happy, but they also know they're not giving you an MIT education. For that, you have to go to MIT, which incorporates intangibles as well, including more meaningful social configuration, skills development, and invisible learning that stretches beyond the classroom. And their main sources of success are taking the knowledge that they create and transferring to innovations. Then some people don't get it. The Khan Academy, for example, Bill Gates loves it. It pushes information. Sure, some of it's instructional, it can have a role, but it's only a small piece of, I think, it should be a larger picture. Peter Thiel is producing $100,000 financial incentives to 20 students to skip school, to skip universities and go learn on their own. That's just limited to 20 people. We can't scale that up to the hundreds of millions of people that are demanding access to higher education today. That's marketing, not action. And people who push for testing regimes also don't get it. In the United States, we have No Child Left Behind. In Holland, I understand there's a real push for that taking place too. They want industrial management of our abilities to repeat information, but not actual thinking. But I think that what Peter Thiel and others are expressing is an appreciation for soft skills. That's street skills. And it's behavioral qualities that enable us to get ahead. So soft skills are an important part of our tacit knowledge. But if you don't have all the knowledge, at least the soft skills will get you through the job. In his 20 Under 20 initiative, Peter Thiel is really, by giving the students or the mentees access to his network, is really helping the soft skills development, which include leadership, being a nice person, friendliness. Seth Godin has been doing the same. But universities have not been doing that so much, been focusing on downloading information to students. So universities could do better at helping students develop better knowledge, and I think particularly at the undergraduate level is a place where we need to focus the most. Now, there's been a lot of discussion regarding the value of university education, but let's be very clear still that university credentials are still worth something. If there are people in the credentials in this room that do not believe it, then they should burn their diplomas now and quit the jobs that they have and any other benefits that they got from having university credentials. In the USA, generally speaking, if you go to college, you're more likely to earn money than your non-college going peers, about twice as much, 3 times as much if you have gone a higher professional degree. Young males with at least some university education or post-secondary education are 4 times less likely to wind up in prison. So there's some real social benefits as well. But that said, there's also a growing sense that having a bachelor's degree or a university education is not the ticket to success that it once was. And particularly in the United States, college is becoming very, very, very expensive. So our response to increasing costs, ambiguous outcomes, and perceived inefficiencies has been to look at how we can be more innovative and entrepreneurial in education. And I think that universities can be entrepreneurial environments. I think that new knowledge creation is in itself an entrepreneurial activity. It's entrepreneurial within the mind, the human experience. And that new knowledge creation is leadership and entrepreneurship of the mind, and we just need to seize and build on these opportunities. Oops, next slide. Uh-oh. There we go. So, it's got a warning. Yeah. Because I think we're looking at dystopian. We're looking at a dystopian future unless we do something about it. And I think we're really looking at the ghettoization of higher education. We have some institutions I think that really get it. We've got the MITs, the Harvards, the Stanfords. Great, they get it. They combine the intangibles, the tangibles, the tacit, the explicit knowledge, and they create some great outcomes. On the other hand, we're also seeing online universities emerge. We're seeing pushes to put stuff online, economize, and that's creating what I think is threatening us with the potential to ghettoize education, where you have one class of students that have access to great education. Everybody else will be prepared for an economy that does not exist today. So today, we just have to choose between one of these two paradigms, or start building a 4th, or a 5th, or a 6th. So my take is that we need to work on expanding our ecology of options. We need to enable more paradigms of post-secondary education to take flight. And I think these include the inspiring examples of the Chaos pilots in Denmark, the Shibuya University Network again in Tokyo, Hyper Island, Sweden, and of course the Nomad School here in Amsterdam, I think are great examples of adding to the ecology of options in higher education. And we need to take action. And because we're social animals, we have basic needs: food, water, shelter, and being the company of each other. And nomads also need a home. To feedback loop up what we've learned to others, refresh our knowledge, we need to recharge, recruit, engage other ideas, etc., etc. In my vision, this is what universities should be providing. Again, it's something that should follow you through your life. It should be an intellectual home and not a factory. And let me just say that I think that one of the beautiful things about the United States, I've been very critical of our education system lately, but I think that one of the most beautiful things is that you always have a second chance, and that we need to take advantage of this more. We need to expand it on a bit. If you delay entering college for a few years, you can always get in later. And I think that's good news for the Teal Fellows who may not be successful in entrepreneurial activities. So if you fail, you can always try again. Sarah Palin went through 4 different universities 5 different times before she finally got a bachelor's degree. We're very generous. And then culture. I don't have a picture for culture because I'm still struggling to figure out what cultural is. But culture will enable people, particularly as youth, to emerge as thought leaders, where we continue to devolve into societies that just want to be entertained. Do we want to develop personal knowledge, or we just want information downloaded to us? So where do we start? Where do we start building our nomadic homes? And I think that the place to do it is right here. I mean, this is why we're here anyways. We've got an amazing group of people assembled here. We can do it. Today, we're embarking on a noble quest of university design. I cannot think of a more noble quest. And of course, some people here that just really inspire me. You've got Peter Spinder and the Nomad School. I mean, how many young people can say that they've started a school? That's fantastic. Or a higher education option. We've got Evelyn Peters is working hard with youth to get the message across. We've got representatives from the Sudbury schools, Lex Hoop, Tu Besselink, Guido Corolla, friends, colleagues at Havia, UVA, NHL, many others working on really creating innovation in education. So that's what we're here for.